Welcome back to Forecast Lab. There's a look at the low-level cloud field from Hurricane Nicholas, now downgraded to a tropical depression. Let's take a look at the surface map. The remains of Nicholas drifting around Louisiana. Central pressure 1006 millibars with winds of 30 miles an hour. So this is just a tropical depression, but the precipitation field out ahead of it quite extensive from Atlanta to Jackson down towards Gulfport, Pensacola, and all the way over towards Gainesville. Up to the north, a fresh outbreak of polar air coming into New York, Pennsylvania, down to Kentucky, and an extensive MCS, actually two MCSs, one over Kentucky and the other up there in the northeast U.S. Warm air advection on the Great Plains. You can see those 80s flowing northward and also bringing some moisture up towards Nebraska and Kansas. 62-degree dew point there at North Platte. And a new polar outbreak into the northwestern U.S. Cool air, 60s and 70s up there in Oregon and Washington. And if you go a little bit further north, let me move the map. You can see up there in Alberta some cold air advection showers with a kind of a dense band of thickness lines indicating that cold air flowing south. And you can see as we go up towards Calgary, 41 degrees and 55 up in Edmonton. And you can see that some of that is probably due to wet bulbing, the precipitation falling out of that cloud and falling into the drier air and evaporating and bringing those temperatures down. And in the southwestern U.S., not much going on. Looks like some of the ridging has returned, and those dew points have fallen off into the 40s. A few weeks ago, we saw those in the 60s out there around Phoenix, Safford, and Tucson. And out in the Atlantic, this little area of disturbed weather, this is kind of a easterly wave that's developed into a low-pressure system. That's an area of interest for NHC. They're sending out a Hurricane Hunter aircraft to take some readings. This is expected to follow the Gulf Stream northward, maybe grazing Cape Hatteras, maybe Cape Cod, but not expected to come inland. However, we will be monitoring that, and we could see the appearance of a tropical storm maybe in a day or two. There's a look at the ever-turbulent weather to our northwest. Alaska remaining quite cool, and looks like 40 degrees there at Fairbanks. So I think summer must be over for that part of the country. And we've got this very wound-up occlusion coming through the Aleutian Islands, and you can see back behind it lots of 40s and 50s. I think that's 48 out there off the edge there around Shemya. Another cool season disturbance going through the Northwest Territories and shifting further east. Yeah, this looks very much like a October map. Area of rain going through Quebec into Labrador, not much to say about that. Up to the north, you can see the vast but not very strong polar high covering the high Arctic, and that's probably about all there is to say about all that. In September, NHC is always of prime interest, so we'll check those graphics out. Tropical Depression Nicholas, there it is. We'll get that motion. I think they've discontinued those, so we'll have to turn to the models to get that information. There's our other disturbance close to the Gulf Stream, and Cape Verde looking very interesting. And this track is looking kind of ominous. A lot of great hurricanes have followed that track towards the U.S. and Cuba and Dominica. So this could certainly enter the picture in about 5 days as it moves into the Gulf. This is a great time to take a look at the models with regard to the tropical activity. Now, the supporter stream on Monday, we were talking about the different models, the European, the Canadian model, and those foreign models have kept the remnants of Nicholas in Texas. The GFS continue to progress it east into Louisiana and Mississippi, and that's kind of what we're seeing. So in that respect, the GFS performance is superior with respect to these tropical cyclones. So let's see what we're looking at. There's the Atlantic system coming together off New Jersey, 1008 millibars. That's not terribly strong, so that would put it in the tropical storm range. That moves on off. Off the right side, we can see our new system. That's going to be the one we're interested in for next week, and that kind of moves along, goes a little bit further to the north. That's different from what NHC has. They've got it going a little bit further south. GFS solution, rapidly recurving that, and that's probably a Category 3 storm getting pulled rapidly northward. Here's how the high temperatures today are looking around the country. We've got this spot of above average temperatures, 101 at Tucson, 86 up at Ely, and another area in the northeast U.S. Temperatures coming up to the mid-80s, approaching records and probably tying the record out at Westfield, Massachusetts. For tomorrow, the heat centers itself on the Rockies from Tucson up to Denver, 102 for a high at Tucson, 105 at Phoenix, and 90 degrees at Colorado Springs. And you can see that heat shifting into Texas by Friday, 101 tying the record at Del Rio, and a band of very warm temperatures all the way from New Mexico into South Texas. It will be a hot one this weekend in the Southern Plains, tying the record at Abilene and Midland, coming up to near 100. And then for Sunday, it appears the heat spreads into the Central Plains and the Midwest, 89 at Chicago O'Hare and 92 at Des Moines. Not breaking any records, but it is going to be fairly close. Well, you probably remember that pancaked-looking cumulus, stratocumulus field on the opening clip. This is what it looks like on the satellite imagery. That's wraparound from Nicholas. And there's that wind field. Let's take a quick look at a sounding. And this shows a weak inversion above 5,000 feet. 850 millibars is where we have the coolest wet adiabat. And above that, it is a little bit warmer. And that would tend to suppress any warm, moist updrafts moving up into the mid-levels. So a lot of the cumulus and stratocumulus is concentrating right there around that level. And very likely a lot of that warm air from 700 to 500 was put out by that hurricane. Latent heat from that storm. And you can certainly see it here on the 500 millibar chart. Kind of a warm core there over Louisiana. And as you get further out, the temperatures drop. So if we take a sounding right there in the middle of that stuff, yep, plenty of warm air. And that's why we call it a warm core barotropic system. And we'll just take a quick tour around the country. Some storms going up on the mountains near Alamogordo and Silver City. Very little of that in Arizona. Clear in the Nevada and California deserts. Some fires going in the Sierra Nevadas near Bakersfield. Fires have been a constant problem in Northern California, especially with that old Dixie fire, the Lake Tahoe fires, and it looks like now it's mostly focused on the Mount Shasta area up to the Cascades. I don't see any huge fires, but they're still putting out some pretty good smoke plumes. As we get further north, we get into some of the post-frontal air. Remember, we got that front right in this area here, and if you look up in the Willamette Valley around Salem, Eugene, you can see cold air advection cumulus, and that burns off as we get the dry air mixing into those low-level parcels. Further up north, we get into some of the jet stream dynamics. You can see the high clouds moving rapidly to the east-northeast. And just downwind of the Cascades, we've got mountain wave activity. These are standing lenticular clouds, a lot of altocumulus and cirrus, and you can see how those waves do not move. It's caused by the flow in the mid-levels going over the mountains, and we're not actually moving north to south. What I'm showing you here is the vertical motion. The airflow goes down on the lee side, up again, and it just kind of oscillates until it regains its equilibrium. Near the top of those waves, it tends to saturate, so we pick up this cloud activity, and in between, as it descends, we get the subsidence. That gives us the gaps in between. In the Dakotas, we have a fairly progressive west to east flow. I can see two main ingredients here. I can see low-level moisture. This is back behind the front, so these are going to be maybe up near the frontal transition zone. Stratocumulus, maybe about 3,000 to 4,000 feet. And then above that, looks like some mid and upper level clouds, perhaps associated with a shortwave. And you can see later in that frame, in that loop there, looks like some elevated cumulus, elevated convection, developing around Grand Forks. Moving down into Oklahoma, we do have the post-frontal air infiltrating that region, and further to the south, the tropical air. In between, there's some sort of frontal boundary right in this area. This is how I had it on the surface analysis. There wasn't a whole lot of data, so I'm not really confident about that position. We did have northeast winds at Fort Smith, but with that 87-degree temperature, that was one of the warmest plots in that area, so I'm not too sure the cold air infiltrated Fort Smith. Fort Smith is located about right here. It's possible in the past hour or two that it came through, so I'm thinking the frontal boundary may be something like that, or even further south. If we really want to know for sure, we can look at Mesonet data. If you go to mesonet.org, you'll get the Oklahoma Mesonet, and we just click on weather at the top, and then we go to the station plots, and that'll give you this nice map here. I can see that the warmest temperatures in Oklahoma are right here, so that's not likely to be behind the front. This is probably all part of the same air mass right here. So I'm thinking the front is about like that. You can see back behind it, mid-80s, and a stout northeast wind, and we pick up the gusts right there near Bartlesville and Miami. So transposing that to our surface map, I'm thinking that front is about like that. Well, we already went over Texas, so we'll just pop down into the southeast U.S., and we can certainly see the rotation in the cloud field right there. That's going to be just west of Baton Rouge. I guess that would be around Lafayette. Let's see, where's that centered? I guess that's right around here. So that's going to correspond to the center of circulation of Nicholas, some dry air underneath these thick cloud elements coming from the northeast, and then the main warm conveyor belt. It's starting to get frontal characteristics, I think. That's moving up to the north into Alabama. And then the northeast U.S. looking for another round of storms here. They're still back in the mountains, well west of Baltimore, west of Washington, D.C., but some very stout convection there. And that's it further up the boundary, just south of Albany, up towards southern New Hampshire, and into Maine. We've got some convective elements there. Taking a look at SPC, severe thunderstorm watches all the way from Pennsylvania up to Maine, and a slight risk for that area. This seems very similar to what we had last Friday, but there it is, a complex of thunderstorms moving west to east along that polar frontal boundary. We find ourselves revisiting the State College radar, numerous storm activity, and there's the Sterling, Virginia radar showing the tail end. A couple of very stout storms all the way from northwest of Baltimore out towards Guess that'd be Winchester, West Virginia. Anyway, that's what we got going on in that region. And that brings us to the upper level patterns. We start out with a large ridge across northern Mexico, so the entirety of the U.S. is under westerlies. So that's another way in which the weather resembles October. Bringing that forward into the rest of the week, little upper level low right there. Where'd that come from? Let's back that up. Yeah, that's part of some little trough that's over Oklahoma along the tail end of that front. So this is likely a shortwave of some kind that made it here from the Pacific. So that's going to close on off and drift around Texas for a couple days. And the remnants of Nicholas, that should be in there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. That's the upper level reflection, and that gets carried into the Carolinas by Friday. And then we see it emerging out into the northeast U.S. by Friday night. It doesn't look like that upper level ridge is really trying to build there across the southern Rockies, and you saw that earlier on the temperature records. Upper level low, kind of a cutoff low there off the coast of California. That possibly has tropical origins, and that gets picked up by the westerlies by Saturday and Sunday. And then we're left with this weird kind of upper level ridge, putting us back under kind of an easterly flow with a closed low over Texas. So this is going to keep things warm from the southwest into the Midwest early next week. Then a very large trough moving onshore. That's going to rapidly clear the patterns. You can see that digging on into the central U.S., breaking down that upper level ridge. And as that moves into the eastern half of the U.S., that's going to link up with some colder air in Canada and bring that southward. The GFS shearing off this next trough late next week and digging that down into the Four Corners area. But you can see here, northwest flow opening up at the 300-hour point towards the end of the month. So very likely this is going to be kind of a cold pattern closing out September. And unfortunately, it looks like some heat returns to the western U.S. once again. So that'll be all for this edition of Forecast Lab. I thank you for watching and supporting. And we'll see you back here on Friday. Hope you have a great Wednesday night, and we'll see you in a couple days. Bye-bye.